Hi guys, only me. Right, this is the third time recording this because for some reason everything keeps dying and it's annoying me. So this is a video close to home, privacy, personal privacy, regulations, rights, all the rest of it. Bit of an old school rant because I'm really wound up and I'm really annoyed. So to highlight something that's happened with the Tornado Cash thing, I'm going to sketch back because this video is all about the Tornado Cash developer being jailed and double standards and everything else that comes with it. And it's really wound me up. So yeah, old school rant. Excuse me. So for those of you who don't know, this guy is Russ Ulbright. Now Russ Ulbright was the developer for Silk Road. So Silk Road was the marketplace that was notoriously highlighted for all of the illicit uses of crypto way back in the day. And Silk Road is what basically gave crypto its pretty notorious bad name in the first sort of 3 to 5 years of its existence. Russ Ulbright is a computer scientist, and he built a marketplace that people could use crypto as the currency for. So an anonymous marketplace, basically. But it was used for lots of illicit activities as well, mainly the sale of small amounts of cannabis. So mainly cannabis, but there was some other stuff on there and some serious stuff on there. You know, there was some trafficking and there was some, so other stuff took place. But that happens in the world everywhere anyway, using traditional methods. So he didn't provide, you know, that's like saying message companies should be held accountable because people used phones to text messages of where to send, you know, stuff to, and it's ridiculous. But more to the point, so far he's been in jail for 3,238 days. There wasn't much of a trial. There was nobody brought as a witness. There was nobody named in crimes. It was basically the fact that he created Silk Road. Okay, you know, so let's look at that one standard. I don't know if any of you know about the birth of the internet. So, but we're going to go into it. So last year, consumers lost 56 billion in identity fraud. Now, the majority of this was lost on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, social media platforms. That's where the majority of identity fraud and scams live and exist, about 80% of it. So it happens, and we know it happens. The birth of the internet, they were worried about regulations. And they were worried that people weren't going to develop if they were going to be held accountable, which is it's a good and fair approach, because if I was a developer and I was going to build something that people could use for something illicit, then I don't want to be held accountable for it. So they introduced this article called Section 230. Now, Article 230 is a pretty much blank canvas. Now, it needs updating, but as it stands, if you create a platform that people use, you will not be held accountable for what people use that platform for. So if somebody conducts a scam on your site, on your platform, then you can't be held liable for it, and it's the person that conducted the scam that can be held liable for it. So over the last decades, it's become pretty prolific within sort of crypto YouTube, crypto Twitter, crypto, that there is scams going on everywhere. But not just crypto, just the world in general. There is so many scams that go on, as just illustrated, 56 billion lost to identity fraud alone. There's more stuff, there's phishing, there's so many things that scams go on. But yet, none of these platforms are held to account. All of the stuff for the elections and Facebook and Twitter, Facebook weren't held to account. They were brought under some sort of congressional review and they were put under some pressure, but nobody was actually held to account. Nobody was arrested, nobody was jailed. You know, none of that happened. And you just think to yourself, okay, so there's a set of double standards there straight off the bat. And it's really irritating, because now we get to the arrest of Tornado Cash. Now, this guy built a platform that people can mix crypto in. Now, there is lots of legitimate uses for that from somebody who's quite an advocate of privacy. If you wanted to move money from one platform to another platform, but you didn't want people to track that or trace that, and you wanted to run it through a mixer, then by all means, go for it. That's your right, because at the end of the day, The only thing that matters in crypto is your endpoints. That's the only thing that needs regulating. So yes, there is a lot of leverage that needs regulating within the DeFi space, but again, that's from your main providers. So if you've got a financial license, then you shouldn't be able to offer leveraging. If you want to if you want to be a crypto lender and you want to take custody of people's assets, then you should be regulated, and you should be heavily, stringently regulated. You should keep full cash reserves. You should keep full liquidity asset reserves. You shouldn't allow rehypothecation. All of these things need to exist. We need a sensible approach to regulation. But if you are just a software developer and you want to create a tool that people can use to better hide their activities, because at the end of the day, there comes an issue with full transparency. And that's the problem with public blockchains. They are fully transparent. Now, it's great for some things, but it's not great for other things as well. So I don't necessarily want people knowing my address and knowing every single interaction I make. And you don't with the bank accounts. People can't just look up my bank account and know everything I pay money on. So why should I be able to do it in crypto? There needs to be a level of privacy. Now, all that matters, as I say, is the end result. When I try and move from my crypto to a sovereign currency, then that goes through regulation. And that I wholeheartedly agree with. It needs it. Anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing, Banking Secrecy Act, all of that stuff needs to be applied to. I actually believe in that. But what I don't believe in is this whole double standard thing. So because if you're not going to hold YouTube accountable, and if you're not going to hold Facebook accountable for interfering in elections, as well as basically shepherding an entire generation's thought process through manipulation of media and manipulation of information, if you're not going to hold your big tech companies accountable, how are you going to arrest a single developer for money laundering? And how are you going to arrest a single developer for money laundering on such a small scale when you've got the biggest banks in the world, which we'll go through now, $2 trillion, 1.5 trillion pounds, 21,000 suspicious activity reports in 2001. This is all money laundering through your top 5 banks that they just happily pay a fine for. There's no jail time, there's no arrests, there's nothing. But yet you've got Ross Ulbright, who's been in jail for 10 years without trial. You've got another developer that's been in jail for 10 years, that's going to be in jail for 10 years without trial. And it's just going to get to the point now where it's going to be so one-sided that it's going to cause more and more divide. And it's just ridiculous. I mean, 2 life sentences plus 40 years without parole. That's what he got for creating a marketplace. So 2 life sentences plus 40 years without parole. Yet YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, and none of them are held accountable because they all hide behind Section 230. So where was Section 230 for Silk Road? Why was the developer held accountable there when YouTube isn't held accountable? And all of these dual standards, if we don't have a sensible approach to regulation, they're going to create such divide and they're going to create chaos. Because when they try and regulate crypto, if they don't regulate it properly, and if they actually go after it as an illicit activity, you've got to remember that we are a new breed and a new age, which is why every politician for the midterms is getting together a crypto sort of agenda, because they want those votes, because they can't win without those votes. Now, the majority of us are pretty clever and we can see through the nonsense. We know that all they're doing is saying that they're going to do something when we fully well know that they're not. And we're leaning towards voting in more progressive and younger politicians. And that's going to be a natural cycle. But all they'll do is they'll force crypto underground. So they'll reforce Silk Road if they try and regulate it out of existence. But they'll reforce it on a way that they can't control. And this whole regulation space has been 10 years too late anyway. Now, I agree they needed to take some time to get their act together, but it's been 15 years since the introduction of blockchain nearly. It's certainly been 12 years since it was out in the wild. So 2, 3, 4 years to sort of think about regulation, by all means. But waiting to regulate because you need to position yourself, or you need traditional finance to position itself where it can actually make a gain, is ridiculous because all they're doing is prolonging the inevitable, and we'll just do it in a way that doesn't include them because it's our choice as consumers. The more and more and more that they try, the more and more that they'll fail. And they need a sensible approach, which most countries have taken a relatively sensible approach to crypto regulation. The UK has, Singapore has. So you've got your Liechtensteins, you've got your Maltas, you've got your safe harbour places. So, but the capital markets that exist in the States that we actually need access to, because that's where we need to live for access to that liquidity, and it's important, which we need the regulations to access. They're cutting them off at the hips, and all of that talent will move, and all of that thing will. And then we get to the Ripple lawsuit from the SEC. You know, pretty much their deadline when they could file it. If it, and actually it was over their deadline because Ripple's biggest argument was that time had elapsed. And the SEC is trying to force it its ongoing sales and all the rest of it. And it's nonsense anyway, because at the start, yes, XRP was definitely a security. Ripple Labs ran all the validators. Nobody else had any say in it. So it was definitely a security, but it grew out of it by 2016, 2017. It became decentralized, which is exactly what happened with Ethereum, which is exactly why Ethereum got a free pass. So why XRP didn't get a free pass, I don't know. Is it just shadow games? Is it just tit for tat? I honestly couldn't say. It's nonsense anyway. The SEC will lose, or there'll be some sort of compromise that, okay, it was a security, but it isn't a security anymore. But all of those options are covered by people much cleverer about law than me. So please go and watch them by all means. My point is that regulations exist and they should be the same. And there isn't. There is a dual standard of regulation that's coming to the crypto space that we need to be very careful of. If we don't manage it and we're not careful, then we're going to be in some serious trouble later on down the line. And you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility with who you vote for, your politicians. These are your responsibilities. Now, we all say that we can't do anything to change it, but we can. We can organise to make change. So there is a big movement in the UK called Don't Pay. Now, I'm not necessarily standing behind Don't Pay Your Energy Bills, but I am standing behind a movement that forces politicians to recap what companies can charge. Because when companies are recording 12 and 13 billion pounds a quarter profits because they've increased their prices that much, and the government says, well, they need to invest in green energy. And yeah, okay, so where's the compromise in that? Okay, so where's the cap? Let's allow them to earn an extra billion or 2 billion so they can invest an extra billion every quarter. So it doesn't have to be all at the same time. The Earth's existed for so many years. You know, the green policy is being pushed astronomically, and the climate is changing. There is no two ways about it. Is it changing because of us? Is it changing because it's just naturally changing? I've got no idea. But it is changing. When I was a kid, we had 4 seasons, we had all the rest of it. But again, it's this regulation that they're bringing into it. The SEC is trying to force companies to disclose how they're investing in green. And all of this stuff that they are taking on countless employees for to try and regulate something that doesn't need regulating. They're creating things that don't need an actual addressing. But yet, they're not approaching regulation on things that do need addressing. So you're being scammed every single day on YouTube. You've got every single mainstream person on Twitter's got at least 1,500 to 2,000 fake accounts, all under the same name, trying to scam money off people or trying to scam something off people. But yet they all hide it, and they don't update Article 230, and they don't say, right, you're going to have to start taking some responsibility. You know, we're going to have to prove verification. We're going to have to make it available for everybody. And then at least when you've got an unverified account with those names and those things, then AI can automatically scrub it. Now, all of these tools could be pretty easy to implement if they were forced to do it, but at the moment they're not being forced to do it. And it's just, yeah. So it just winds me up. So we need to be careful. So be vocal about these things, okay? This is a great cause. Now, Ross Ulbright made a site, by all means. So, but it just is ridiculous. There's no need for it. There is no need for it at all. And 500,000 people have signed a petition so far to free him. So, by all means, go and sign it because it's ridiculous. So, be vocal about your support for this guy. He's just a developer. And code is protected under the First Amendment as free speech. And if we start censoring code and we start censoring protocols instead of the users that use them, we're going to end up in a very dystopian future where everything is under very, very strict governmental control. And there needs to be a balance. So when it comes time to look at who you vote for and look at your politicians and look at how they are forming regulations and where they stand, look at all of these things and then actually put people into office that can actually be sensible and take a sensible approach to regulation instead of a one-sided approach to regulation. I am sorry for the length of this video. It's a bit of an old school rant. I do apologize. So I've got another one on David Moss because he's a lawyer as well. That's coming next. So, but for the time being, just enjoy your day, your weekends, and just be careful. If it's a scam, just never give anybody anything. Don't give, if anybody's asking for something over a social media platform, just don't do it. So it's very simple. Just don't do it. So always go to the legitimate sites. Check contracts for crypto. Contract addresses are public. They're there. Make sure it's the right one. So just use their sites. Use their links. Use their. Again, this isn't financial advice. It's just to use their stuff. So you have a responsibility. Take a responsibility. Make a change yourself. The more you can make a change, the more a movement will follow. So, but we're going to have to organize against this. Because if this continues, then we're going to get into some real trouble. It shouldn't be allowed, and we should stop it now.